So today I got another story, and we're going to be talking about it. It's a prequel to, or it's a side story to my main story called End of the Autobots. And it's obviously about the Autobots, because Optimus Prime has been dead since part 4 of my story. Not really going to go into detail on how. But the new leader of the Autobots is Ironhide. And he's the weapons specialist and a leader. And he has this special ability to where he can make his... If he presses a button on his hand like twice, it makes his armor, or activates a second set of armor that's pretty much unbreakable. And he turns into a Ford truck, which is right there. Yeah, he's pretty badass. Then there's Ratchet, the medic and the second in command. Turns into an ambulance, obviously. Sadly, he was killed by Astro Train and Blitzwing. He had his arm shot off and was beaten very bad, and was shot with a sniper rifle through the back, and died in Ironhide's arms. So yeah. Then there's Bumblebee. Oh, come on. Not this shit again. And Bumblebee is basically the scout. Yeah. Basically just Bumblebee. Then there's Jazz. Yeah, he's basically the stylish Autobot, and he's the lieutenant, and the cool guy. It's also my favorite Transformer of all time, probably, I think. At the very least, he's my favorite Autobot. And, sadly though, he sacrificed himself to save Ironhide and was shot and killed by Onslaught. Then there's Warpath. Warpath he was basically the tough, big tank, and, then he was, shot through the back and killed by Bludgeon with a cosmic rust gun, and rusted to death. Then there's RC. She's basically the sniper, and yeah, she's pretty badass. At least I'd like to think so. And she transforms into something. I don't really care what. Then there's Wheeljack. He's a wrecker and a scientist. Transforms into his Transformers Prime vehicle mode. And yeah, he obviously has 2 swords, because I love Transformers Prime Wheeljack. It's probably my favorite Wheeljack. And yeah, he actually survived. Then there's Mirage. Obviously has the invisibility ability. But, similar to the movie version, he has arm blades. But he does also have guns. And he had a really cool segment where he had to basically stealth attack a bunch of Decepticons. And he also got in a fight with Starscream and beat him. But, before he could kill Starscream, when Starscream was going to kill Ironhide, he was stabbed through the back and killed by Bludgeon. Then there's Brawn. He's basically the small, tough Autobot. I believe I also made him a wrecker. Yeah, he was ripped in half by Brawn and Onslaught. Then there's Wolf. This is my friend's original character. He's basically a Maximal. He's pretty badass. Then there's Chromia. She's obviously Ironhide's lover. And, yeah, she's a medic, mostly, but she's pretty capable in the field, but she's usually not in the field. Then there's the Protectobots. They're basically, they all combine into Defensor. And let me go back for a minute. Alright. And Defensor and the Protectobots were all destroyed by Bruticus and the Seekers. Starscream, the current leader of the Decepticons. He was very dangerous. And, he was going to kill, or he was going to fight Ironhide until Bludgeon stabbed Starscream through the back and brought it up through his head and killed him, basically, and revealed that he had been using Starscream the whole time. Starscream obviously turns into an F-22 Raptor, I think it's called. Then there's Bludgeon. Yeah, he's a Decepticon assassin, very skilled in combat, extremely dangerous. And, he was crushed under Metroplex's fist, and he turns into a tank. Then there's Dirge. Dirge is basically one of the Conehead Seekers. He's the leader of them. And, I believe I made him get shot in the spark by Bumblebee. Then there's Ramjet, who was the second main Seeker. I know that's Thrust, but I think Ramjet suits him more. And, he was killed by, I believe it was either RC or someone. Then there's Thrust, who was, he was going to betray Starscream, but Starscream found out and slit his throat and blew his face off. And then there's Blitzwing, who's the triple changer and one of Starscream's Seekers. Transforms into a tank and a jet, obviously. And, he was killed by Wolf, I believe. Had his head ripped off by Wolf. And Astrotrain is Blitzwing's partner. Basically, they were... I believe Astrotrain also had his neck snapped. And, yeah, was killed by Wolf. Then there's Onslaught. He's basically Ironhide's... He's the bot that was able to break Ironhide. And, yeah, he was killed by Ironhide, stabbed in the spark, and congratulated him before dying. Brawl is basically the big tough one who loves to kill stuff. He was shot in the spark and severely injured by a Bumblebee, Jazz, and RC, and died. Swindle is basically a hustler, and he's an asshole. He was blown up by Jazz. Then there's Blastoff. He's basically one of Onslaught's aerial supports. And, yeah, he was shot in the face by RC. Then there's Vortex, who I believe was killed by Jazz or someone. Then there's Bruticus, who, well, obviously we don't know what happened to him because all the Combaticons died. Arachnid. She was ripped in half by Wolf because she'd injured his lover. Shrapnel was one of Arachnid's Insecticons, and he was grappled and thrown at Ratchet by Jazz and Ratchet chopped his head off with his saw. Then Bombshell basically had his head squished by Ironhide. And Kickback had his head ripped off by Wolf. And there's Metroplex, the last Autobot Titan. He was severely injured by Trypticon and died of his injuries. And then there's Trypticon, and he had his head chopped off by Metroplex and died. And that's all of the characters. If you liked, leave a like and maybe subscribe if you want. You know, I need that good some good YouTube subscribers. But go ahead, do what you want. And as always,